What's up, everybody? Fight night, Overeem versus Harris. This is the third fight in 7 days or 6 days, whatever you want to call it, right? This is crazy ridiculous, right? People made weight. Alistair Overeem, the veteran, the KG veteran, who has a gajillion fights. As of right now, he has 63 fights. This is 64 fight. He's been fighting for a long time. Alistair Overeem, you got to have a lot of respect for him because he's gone through basically, he's been in the UFC forever, right? And so more importantly, what's interesting is that, he's been he's been fighting since 1999. This guy's 39 years old. He's basically been fighting his whole adult life. He wins and loses, wins and loses. He's entertaining. He's up for any challenge. He's the guy that got knocked out by Francis Ngannou, where everybody everybody kind of knows who he is now. So Alistair Overeem just, he has like a half and half record, right? He's not consistently winning. He fights for the belt every now and then and he loses it. He's like never really been a champion in the UFC, right? But he's been in the UFC for a while now, right? As if I'm sorry, I'm looking down. He's been in the UFC for 9 years now, current 9-year stint, right? And he's fought who's who, right? So he's a veteran and he's also fought a lot of high profile champions and just fighters, right? Like he's fought everybody, right? So you got to give this guy credit. He's very game for this, right? He fights an opponent who has an interesting story, right? This Walt Harris guy who's, 13-7. Who is this guy, right? Walt Harris is a very, I'm going to bring this up here. Walt Harris has a story about his tragic death of his daughter. So this almost makes me think of, like, in a way, of the Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas situation, right? Where Buster Douglas lost his mother, fought his butt off and beat Mike Tyson, the unbeatable monster, right? So I don't know that Alistair Overeem is an unbeatable monster. He's been beat a lot. He has a lot of fights, but he has a lot of losses. So the thing with him is, when you have a fighter that's starting to rack up a lot of losses, now obviously they're in contract with the UFC and they've had a lot of fights, but when you fight somebody like Walt Harris, who's been in the UFC, where is it at here? He's been in the UFC since 2014. He's 36 years old. They're only 3 years apart, and there's basically 20 fight difference, right? Or actually a 35 fight difference between how many fights they fought, right? Or 40 fights difference, right? So Walt Harris is relatively new. He started fighting in 2011, so he's only been fighting since he was like 27, right? And so he really doesn't take knockouts. Walt Harris doesn't get knocked out. So the benefit to Walt Harris is his brain is not necessarily beat up so bad, right? He's a little bit older. His brain was developed already when he started fighting. So everything's kind of settled in his body, right? So I don't know that he's only been knocked out actually twice. Now that I'm looking at his record, he's only been knocked out twice in his whole career. So Alistair Overeem is obviously not at the peak of his career. Can Walt Harris take out? So emotionally, is there going to be a chance is he going to be affected by this, right? So Walt Harris has an opportunity to get this victory and move on to bigger, better things, right? And so he can start becoming the top 10 and he can put himself in a position where he can start vying for these bigger fights, move up in the cards. Now he's headlining this card is a kind of weird thing, but it's amazing that the UFC has been able to put this on and do this. I think Walt Harris is going to win via knockout. I think that Walt Harris is young in terms of miles or in terms of fights done, right? So he's 36 years old. They're only 3 years apart, but Walt Harris has a lot less wear and tear on him. I want to give it to Walt Harris. I think in the second round, he's going to get a knockout. You guys tell me what you guys think. His last 3 wins have been by knockout. They didn't necessarily have been, super high profile people, but he's still getting the knockout. So tell me what you guys think. Like, subscribe. You don't like the video? Like, subscribe. Either way, tell me what you guys think. UFC, kudos for putting on 3 events in the course of a week.